of GST and the type of companies. Last week, Mr. Murugaraj asked me to share some information about the GST and type of the companies. Just I share whatever I know about, as I am in the field for last 20 years. I know whatever I am having. I know I just to share the information. What is GST? And what are the companies available for if anyone is want to start the company, what are the facilities, what are the advantages and disadvantages, everything just to share. If you have any questions end of the session, I welcome your questions. I am answer all your queries. The first one is GST. The GST in India, it is implemented, it is with effect from 1st July 2017. So before that, lot of taxes are there, that sales tax, customs duty, manufacturing duty, and service tax, luxury tax, entertainment tax. A lot of taxes, indirect taxes are available before GST. And 1st July 2017, the GST was introduced in India. This is a very great change in industry. The very big reforms actually. GST is a very big change in industries. I just what is GST? Goods and Service Tax. Everybody is known as a GST. It is an indirect tax which replaced many taxes, like sales tax, customs duties, central excise, luxury tax, everything. I just give some example what is before GST and after GST. I just explain in some example. Before GST is like a before marriage. So normally we are answerable to everyone in the family. So before marriage, we are answerable to our father, mother, father, our elder brother, elder sisters. We are answerable to everyone. So before GST in India, lot of taxes are there. Sales tax, we are answerable to sales tax, service tax, entertainment tax, luxury tax, and customs duty, and manufacturing duty, and octroi duty. So lot of we are answerable to all the taxes like before marriage. Yes. After marriage, like a GST. After marriage, I share my PowerPoint. 1 minute. So before GST, just for example, before GST is like a this thing. After GST is like a after marriage. So after marriage, we are answerable to only to our wife. So we are not answerable to anyone, father, mother, like that. After GST, all the taxes replaced by GST. So we did not comply with the customs, we did not comply with the central excise, luxury tax, entertainment tax, nothing. All the taxes replaced by GST. We are answerable to only GST. All the taxes gone. This is a very good thing. Instead of answering to all the members in the family, answering to wife is the best thing. But always she will not listen to us. That is a different thing. But anyway, all the queries which we normally we are facing the businessman, that the central government never listen to us. They will pass a act whenever they wish to pass. They will pass. They will not listen to us. That is a one disadvantage. Anyway, these are jokes apart. This is a GST. The GST is a single tax. In concept, it is a 1 minute.
No, I'm sharing it. I'm sharing it. We are all able to see the screen now.
Yeah, Mrugi.
Yes, go ahead. Yes. I'll take care of that.
But I'm not able to go to the next slide.
You just let me know. I will move on.
Yeah, next slide. Yeah. GST is a goods and service tax is a single tax. Okay, so that is a main advantage in GST. There is two aspects is there in GST. Is the input tax credit. The input tax credit means whatever when we are buying material from the suppliers, when we are availing service, the GST is goods and service. So whenever we are buying material from suppliers, we are availing service from the customers. When we pay tax, is input tax paid. Whatever tax paid by us is input tax credit. That tax can be adjusted against our output tax. In generally the idea is GST is the end customer. The basic idea is the GST who will suffer, who will bear all the taxes. The idea is the end customer will bear all the GST taxes. The supplier, the suppliers also, they are collecting GST from the one manufacturer is raising the bill to dealer, and dealer raising the bill to sub dealer raising the bill to customers. The end tax, the customer only pay all the GST taxes. This is a thing. Next slide, Murugi. Supply. What is supply? So all the supplies attract GST. Supply means all forms of supply of goods or services. So I am selling one item is a supply of goods. I am doing service to our clients is a supply of services. I am supplying the services. I am filing income tax return for my client. It is supply of services. I am supplying the services. For example, one trader is selling the goods to some customer. He is supplying this supply of goods. So two or both are attract GST. In supply, two aspects is there. One is inward supply, outward supply. Okay, I am availing service from my client is the inward supply for me. For example, Murugaraj is availing my service. So for Murugaraj is an inward supply. Whatever I am raising bill, it is an inward supply for Murugaraj. So like that, my customer, I am raising bill to my customer. That bill is inward supply for the customers. Outward supply means I am raising bill, so outward supply for myself is outward supply. So two aspects, inward supply and outward supply. So these are the main phrase we are using for GST. So inward supply, what is supply, and we should understand second what is inward supply and what is outward supply. So basically we should know what is supply and inward and outward. Once we know inward supply and inward outward, that everything will be solved. Next slide, Murugi. And in GST, so whatever I am sharing is only basic knowledge only, because you are all entrepreneurs, you are doing some businesses. I am sharing, I am not going too deep. I am just sharing the basic information. Under GST is only 4 slabs are only available. One is 5%, 12%, 18% and 28%. One rate is 3% for only for gold. Actually, the Gold Association got a special permission from the Government of India. Previously, the gold rate is 1%. So the gold has got 3% from the government. So only 4 slabs are available: 5%, 12%, 18 and 28. In 5%, most of the essential items like provisions, edible oil, tea, packaged food items. So most of the essential items comes under 5% category. Okay, and 12%, 18% is a 90% of items or products or services covered under 12 and 18%. If anybody doing services, you can straight away you can say that it is comes on 18%. Wow, any kind of services, all services, 98% of service, not 98, 99.9% of services comes under 18% category. And 12% category also 20% of products, some medical items, medical equipments, 20% of items are covered under 12%. So in short, all essential items 5%, most 90% of items 18%, only 10% of item 12% and 10% 28%. 28% all luxury items like car, any luxury item is 28%. Furnitures, and furniture also recent amendment they reduced to 18%. So only few items are comes under a 28%. Murugi, next slide.
Yes.
This I explained. Next. Yeah, the miscellaneous item is the tax invoice. What is tax invoice? So we are actually the time limit is there under GST Act. Once we supply the goods, within 30 days we should raise the invoice. This is the Act. One provision is applicable in GST Act. Same like that is for service also. Once you supply the services, the service is completed. So within 30 days you have to raise the invoice for the supply of services. This is a time limit is there. And next one is input tax credit. So for input, availing input, what is input tax credit? For I am having one, I'm running one business. I am paying some, I'm incurring some expenses that I am paying rent actually. For rent, I am paying 1 lakh rupees, 50,000 rupees rent I am paying. For that, I am GST is 18%. So I am paying. I am receiving the bill today. That bill I should I can avail the input tax credit immediately. Once I receive the bill, I can take input tax credit, not an issue. So I am receiving bill from the landlord. 1 lakh rent is 18,000 GST. 1 lakh 18,000 rupees. I am receiving the bill today. That 18,000 rupees you can take input tax credit immediately. No problem. But the payment should made within 180 days. Then only that credit is eligible. Otherwise, the credit will be disallowed by the department. The payment, it is an indirect tax method. Why they made provision like this is, the tax should be paid by you to your landlord. So if you are not making payment 1,18,000, this means that you did not pay GST to your landlord. So you are not eligible to take input tax credit. This is a concept. The time limit the government is fixing 180 days. If you are not making payment 180 days, your landlord, your supplier, whoever, supplier or landlord, whoever, the input tax credit will be disallowed on 181 day. The moment 6 months gone, after that, the first day the input tax will be disallowed. You are not eligible to take input tax credit. Next slide, Murugan. So this is a basic. This only I shared only for 10% about the what is GST. In question and answer session, I will I will explain more brief. The next part of topic is type of companies. Actually, for type of the 3 type of companies, 4 type of companies is available in India. The first one is proprietor and partnership company and LLP. Last one is private limited company. Next slide, Murugi. So proprietor, what is the proprietor? Most of the companies actually in 10 years before, 10-15 years before, there are 2 companies are available, only proprietor and partnership, only 2 companies. I think from 1990, before 1990 and all, only 2 companies. Nobody knows about private limited and LLP. So proprietor company, I just share the what are the advantages and disadvantages for the proprietor company. The proprietor company is easy to establish. Proprietor is a single one-man army, one-man, easy to establish. What is easy to establish? A sole proprietorship does not have any specific registration requirement. They can start it without any registration. If you decided to start company, you can start immediately. No registration, nothing. You can start immediately. That is one advantage for proprietorship company. Second thing is easier to operate. What is easier to operate? The particular person is a sole decision maker. He did not consider anyone's suggestion. He is a sole authority. He can take whatever the decision, he can take decision. That is an advantage, second advantage. And third one is sole beneficiary of profit. The entire profit belongs to one person. He did not share the profit with anybody else. Whatever the profit or loss is, the entire belongs to the sole proprietor. That is a third advantage. And compliance of taxation. The proprietorship is not registered with any government authority like the Ministry of Company Affairs. No need any compliances. The tax is very nominal. Only the slab rate is applicable to proprietor. Like a normal individual, they are filing income tax return. The same slab rate is applicable for proprietor company. Up to 5 lakhs is 10% and 5%. Recently, slab rates are reduced. Recent notification budget. So up to 10 lakhs, there is very minimum tax, and above 10 lakhs only 30%. That tax compliance is very easy. They can avail that exemption. Apart from tax, they can avail 80C exemption, 80G exemption, LIC payment, housing loan. All the benefits are available in respect of compliance of taxation for proprietor. Privacy, yes. Privacy means the data, like a private limited company, all the data are available in Ministry of Company Affairs. If you start a private limited company, the entire data is available in Ministry of Company Affairs. For sole proprietor, there is no database maintained by the Government of India. So it's a privacy. So these advantages for proprietorship and disadvantages. It is unlimited liability. What is unlimited liability? Actually, this is one of the disturbing aspect of sole proprietorship firm. Any on the occurrence of any loss or anything happened, the proprietor must meet the liabilities at any cost. That means his personal asset will have to be used for discharging the liabilities. Their personal assets will be used. Whatever, any problems, any liability, statutory compliances, any sundry debtors payment, creditors payment, any loan, anything, their personal asset to be will be taken for the discharging the liability. That is a big disadvantage for the proprietorship concern. If any small mistake in your business, the entire asset in your name will be gone. They will seize by the department. They have a right to take the assets in your name. That is a big disadvantage for proprietor company. And difficulty in obtaining funds. The banks are not ready to give fund to the proprietorship company. There is a one-man army. Normally the banks and financial institutions do not believe the proprietorship company. Today they are running the company. Tomorrow they disappear. It's not. It's one man. The lack of knowledge of the proprietor also have a problem. So there is some problem for obtaining fund from the financial institution. Proprietor normally, some banks have made very clear instruction: don't give any loans to the proprietor. No, big loans. So for 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs you can get. But if you go 1 crore, 2 crore, 5 crores, so some difficulties we are facing. As an auditor, I am sharing there's some difficulty facing for getting loan from the financial institution for proprietor company. And then is higher tax incidents also is after 10 lakhs. After 10 lakhs, there is same 30% is applicable for proprietor. So you can till 10 lakhs you can avail the benefit of taxation. But after 10 lakhs, all proprietor, partnership, proprietor, private limited, everything same slab, 30%. So these are the short note of proprietor advantages and disadvantages. Next, please, Murgi. The second thing is partnership. Actually, partnership also facing lot of disadvantages and advantages also. First one is less formal if your legal obligation. If you want to start the partnership, you can start immediately. If you buy 300 rupees stamp paper, you enter the agreement and immediately you start the partnership. Is not a problem. And second one is easy to get started. Sharing the burden. So in partnership company, actually your 3-4 partners are joined together and you can share the burden, work burden. So sharing the burden is one advantage for partnership, because 3 partners, they are sharing the work, sharing money sharing. So sharing is the main advantage for partnership firm. And access knowledge, skill, experience. Okay, 3-4 partners joined together, they share the knowledge, the experience on contacts. So okay, that is one advantage for. Next one is better decision making. Okay, for anything, if 5 people are joining together, definitely they will get more knowledge, they will get everything is a better. And privacy. So the partners are close people, so privacy also possible in partnership. And more partners, more capital. Once more partners come, more capital also will induct in the partnership firm. Next partner, Murgi. The disadvantage, actually, for partnership, I never suggest to my clients to open a partnership company. It's even though some advantages are there, lot of disadvantages are there in the partnership. The main thing is the business has no independent legal status. What is independent legal status means? In proprietor company, the personal assets will be liable for any loss or any problem with the creditors or loan creditors. The creditors may take the personal property. Same rule is applicable for partnership also, because partnership company is not a independent legal status. It is the partnership companies which is created by the partners. The partners and the partnership firm, no different entity, is one and the same. So it's unlimited liability. If any problems with the partnership firm, the property of individual property of partners is liable for discharging the liability. So that is the biggest disadvantage for partnership firm. And decision making also is a problem. More than 1%, 2% decision making also is a problem. Taxation is a very big disadvantage for partnership taxation. Even if you earn 1 rupee, you have to pay 30% tax. This is a very, very biggest disadvantage for partnership. So that is the reason I never suggest to my clients not to open company under partnership. Partnership is a failure method. It is a double taxation method. Partnership, the person is a short term period, short term contract. So okay, we are going to open a company only for 1 year. Particular project is over, we are going to close the company. In this case, you can open the partnership company. If you want to run a big level and a continuous process, lifelong, don't go with the partnership. Partnership is a lot of disadvantages there. So taxes is a major part. If you show 1 rupee as a profit, you have to pay 30 paise. So it's a very big disadvantage for the partnership firm. Last one, limits on business development. You cannot do more turnover in partnership firm. Lot of problems, lot of complication for executing the deeds, documents with the financial institution. It's a big problem for partnership firm. It's a big advantage for partnership company. Next, Murgi. And third one is, first one is proprietor, second is partnership, third one is private limited. Actually, now recent times after 2008, most of the companies, new companies, they go with only private limited. They don't go with either partnership or proprietor, because nowadays all is digitalized, and the transparency, the creditors and everybody wants a transparency, and whether they are filing returns or not, they know about the directors, everything. So transparency is going on. So that is after 2007, out of 100, 70 companies are go with the private limited. Private limited is a separate legal entity. So private limited is a company, because I'm going to start a private limited company, is a separate legal entity. That means the company is created by the promoters of the company. The company got a legal entity. The company can enter agreement in their name, own name. So this is a big advantage for private limited company. Uninterrupted existence. So in the private limited company, so we have to start with the private limited company with minimum two members, two directors. So no, if anyone is not existent, so the continuance of private limited company never disturbed. It is going on uninterrupted existence. And the third one is limited liability. Is a very big advantage for private limited companies. Is a limited liability. The director's liability is limited by the shares. Whatever the amount invested by them, that is a limit. The personal asset never attached by the anything happened to the company, any liability happened to the company, the personal asset of the directors not liable, will not be used for discharging liability. They are very safe. The personal assets are very safe. So that is the reason I suggest my client always go with private limited. Don't go with partnership. We have only two options available. One is proprietor, another one is private limited company. Don't go with the partnership. And the free and easy transfer of shares. If you want to share your ownership, if you want to transfer your ownership, you can do immediately within a second. For executing the transfer of shares, you can transfer your shares immediately. Though no, it's matter of fraction, matter of 1 minute you can do whatever the transfer. It is done in private limited company. And the private limited company can buy property in their own name. They can sell, they can buy. So it's a separate legal entity. So that is the main advantage. Third is capacity to sue and be sued. The private limited company as a artificial person. Private limited is an artificial person. They can enter agreement on individually and they can sue cases and could be sued. This is a very big advantage for private limited company. And the dual relationship. So company is a separate entity, and the directors may come, may go, but the company's existence is always. Today I am the director. Tomorrow I may go, or I may come, or I may go, but the company never cancel and never cancel anyway. So it's a two separate dual relation. Director separate and company is separate. Borrowing capacity. Nowadays the bankers are giving fund only to the private limited company. If you have private limited company, formed private limited company, they will believe you first. The bankers, financial institution believe first actually. In Nokia, I am the auditor for Nokia company. They in Chennai, they opened the factory. They appointing the distribution dealership. Their first condition is they will allot dealership only to the private limited companies, not proprietor or partnership. So these are because it's a private limited is a transparency. You cannot close the company. You cannot open the company immediately, and you cannot close the company immediately. These are advantage, lot of advantages. Next one, please. And private limited also we have some disadvantage also there. That disadvantage only. This is not the disadvantage actually. Registration process only. The registration process it takes 20 days maximum. 20 days to you cannot start immediately like a proprietor and partnership. If you decide today I am going to open the company, you can start a proprietor partnership within a day. Today you are thinking, tomorrow you can start the company. But for private limited you can't do it like that. It takes minimum 20 days to form the company because some due diligence process is going on for initial stages. We have to apply all the documents. They will verify partner directors details, directors PAN card, Aadhaar card. That process will be done by the Ministry of Company Affairs. So that is one disadvantage. Second is compliance formalities. Compliance means we have to comply some forms with the Ministry of Company Affairs. Any changes, anything. If you are availing loan from the financial institution, we have to intimate to the Ministry of Company Affairs immediately. So that compliance is there. Division of ownership. The division of ownership is not a problem. It's not a disadvantage. In private limited, for example, the minimum you can bring shareholder 40 for private limited company. I am talking about only the private limited company, not listed companies. Is a private limited companies. So you cannot bring shareholders more than 40. That is only. Normally we are opening company with the two. In most of the companies, only husband wife is the directors. Only 2 or 3, not more than 3. So 40 is a very good limit. But that anyway, I have just shared this is one part of disadvantage, division of ownership. We cannot bring more shareholders in the private limited company. Moving next. Yeah, with this I conclude my thing, knowledge sharing. If any questions, I will explain in brief.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Balu. Like
Yes,
you mentioned 3 type of. I've also heard about a 4th type, liability.
LLP. I just explained what is LLP. LLP is a limited liability partnership. Is upgrade version of partnership. So
Okay.
normally, you entered you opened a company in partnership. You can register immediately, but LLP is a upgrade version of partnership. The same Ministry of Company Affairs is maintaining the record of all the partners. And maintain is upgradation of partnership. The same liability and the same disadvantages is applicable in LLP also. So LLP also I am not suggesting LLP. LLP is a upgrade version. Don't I normally not suggest with LLP. All the advantages and disadvantages for partnership is applicable for LLP also. Limited liability partnership.
Okay.
And one in limited liability there is one benefit is there. The personal asset of the partners will not be liable for discharging the liabilities of the company. That is one advantage is given by the Ministry of Company Affairs.
Okay. And is there something like limited liability corporation also, LLC?
Yeah, same. Limited liability is a corporation also same.
Okay. Now there is a question from Veena. She wants to. I would like to know about OPC. What is OPC? I don't know.
It's a one-person company. Actually, what happens, sir? The Ministry of Company Affairs are giving some lot of schemes to bring people from proprietorship to one-person company. The one-person company also is an upgrade version of proprietorship.
Okay.
The LLP is an upgrade version of partnership. So what happened? The Ministry of Company Affairs, they want to bring more people from partnership because partnership is a failure method. So what happened? They cannot. The middle level people either they go with the partnership or private limited. They cannot go private limited immediately. So there are a lot of complaints. So to get people from partnership, they open LLP, limited liability partnership. And to get people from proprietorship, the Ministry of Company Affairs announced a scheme for one person company. It's upgrade version of proprietorship.
Okay, okay. Can I open a new private limited company while working in some company as a full-time employee?
Actually, you can open the company. Not a problem. What is your position in the new company? Director or shareholder?
Okay, so Mohan Kumar, can you unmute yourself and answer the
Yeah, so consider I am a director.
Yes, sir. One full-time director, you are in one company as a full-time director, cannot be in another company as a full-time director.
Okay, but
So you are in one company, you are a director in the company, you are working as a full-time, as a managing director or whatever position, you are working on full-time basis. You cannot be a full-time director in another company. It's a disqualification of directors.
Okay,
But can I be a normal employee in a company, a full-time employee and a full-time director in a
No, sir.
company?
Actually, the full-time director treated as a employee of the company. The difference is employee and director both are employee only. Director is a management employee, and the director comes under the employer-employee relationship only. So there is no difference between employee and director. Director is a management employee. That's it. All the ESI, PF, all the provisions applicable for director also.
Okay.
So you mean to say like if I am working in some company, I cannot open a private limited company?
You can open a private company, not a problem. But you cannot be a director in the company, full-time director in the company. You can open a company as a shareholder of the company.
Okay, okay, okay.
You cannot be a director in that company. You have to appoint somebody else as a director. For example, in Reliance company, Reliance Industries Limited, the ownership is somebody else. The director is someone. They are appointing director.
Okay.
Director is the employee of the company.
Okay. Now, there is a question from Anju. She is saying nowadays companies are opened in a day. There was an article in Times of India, but I think you just mentioned that it takes at least 20 days. So has the situation changed?
No, sir. Actually, the farmers, I don't know in which magazine released the one day.
Times of India.
That's why the private limited it is not possible. In private limited, lot of formalities are there. First, we have to apply the DIN, director identification number for the directors, and we have to apply DSE for the directors. So once we have both the things, we can start the company immediately. For DSE, it takes 2 days. For name availability, first we have to go with the name availability. We have to choose any 4 names in which one company name will be approved by the Ministry of Company Affairs. It takes 3 days. For name approval, it takes minimum 3 days. So after that, DIN is 1 day, DSE 2 days. Minimum, I am telling 20 days is a maximum. If the name is approved by the Ministry of Company Affairs and all the directors having DIN, DSE is readily available, you can open in 4 days.
Okay.
The 20 days, I am telling the time limit, assuming that the directors don't have DIN number, DSE, nothing there. All the situation I am considering, I am telling.
So you mean to say like if we are starting from scratch?
Yes, sir.
Like if we are starting from scratch, then the maximum it might take is 20 days.
Yeah, maximum 20 days. You can if you have all the documents readily available in your hand, we can get 3-4 days.
Okay.
The 20 days, what I am trying to tell you is the directors don't have any DIN, DSE, nothing. So 20 days is a comfortable time.
Okay. And all these procedures, like all these can be done online?
Yes, everything is online. No manual, but everything is online.
Okay. And do you have that question? There was a big question on GST. If you have it in front of you, maybe you can answer. I registered a company in 2016. My CA got the GST.
I think Murugi has shared that question, no? Murugi?
Yes, I think that was the same question shared to you through WhatsApp.
Okay. It is in chat box or WhatsApp? WhatsApp.
It's in chat box also. You can take either.
1 minute, 1 minute.
At 3:32, the question was.
Yeah. I registered a company in 2016. My CA got the GST registration also done at the same time. Though we did not expect to meet the turnover criteria 20 lakhs. Now most of the clients pay me another. I got the amount in my company, so I have to pay GST just because. Actually, in GST there is a threshold limit of 20 lakhs. Up to 20 lakhs, you did not registered under GST. So 1 minute, please be online. 1 minute. Sorry.
Yeah,
Actually,
no.
the 20 lakhs limit is the GST threshold limit for unregistered dealers. You please, most of the people are confused about the 20 lakhs threshold limit. Once you registered with the GST, that threshold limit becomes 0. The threshold limit 20 lakhs is applicable only to the dealers who not registered with GST. Once you registered with the GST, the threshold limit becomes 0. After that, even if you receive 1 rupee, you have to pay GST. Answer is the question is clarified.
Okay, so if I want to ask the question a bit differently, so I raise a bill. One of the clients, they say, "Sir, I don't need any bills and other things. You just tell me how much I have to pay." So I say 10,000 rupees. So that 10,000 rupees, how is that included into my billing? Should I show it as some 8,200 or something like that plus 18% and pay the 18% to the government, or can I do it differently? Shweta, is my understanding correct about this question? Or you may please step in and ask if there is any gap.
This question is clarified, no? That 20 lakh threshold limit.
Yeah, I think this is a continuation of that question only, Balu. Shweta is here.
Repeat that question actually once again.
No, I'm saying, so yeah, I understand. So once we register for GST, every single bill has to be, has to have a GST component of 18%.
Okay.
So I pay 10,000 as a bill amount, so there will be 10,000 plus 1,800 for the GST. Okay. So some of the people say, no, I don't want to pay GST, I don't want bill and other things. You simply give me no invoice needed and other things. Okay. So what do you do in these cases?
No. The invoice is a statutory obligation of the service provider. Your client don't have right to tell don't need invoice and all. It's as a registered dealer, you should raise invoice with the GST. Once you register with the GST, whatever the money received from your customer, you have to raise the tax invoice. Whether you receive 10,000 or 8,000 or 7,000, you have to raise the invoice including GST. Suppose you receive 10,000 rupees, you have to raise the invoice for 10,000 inclusive of GST.
Okay.
So if you are not raising invoice, the GST people come for audit, they will take the figure from your bank account. Based on the receipt, they will charge GST with penalty. So whatever the received from your client, you have to raise a invoice definitely.
So let's say I obviously have a current account for my proprietorship company, GST associated with it, and then I will also have an SB account.
Okay.
How does the payments to my SB account, how are they considered?
Actually, whatever the receipt in current account as well as in savings accounts will be treated as a business receipt. You have to prove that in savings bank account is not if it is not business receipt in savings account, the burden of proving on your part. You have to prove this is not a business. This is from my friends and relatives. This is a loan from friends and relatives. You have to prove the receipts. Otherwise, the department will consider as a taxable income, and they will charge GST. And the GST people will take all your bank's account. Nowadays, the bank account are linked with the PAN number, and your GST number also is linked with the PAN number. They will not ask you the details of bank account. They will take all the details from that directly by putting your PAN number.
Okay. I think that clarifies.
Yeah.
I think Cora seems to have a related question here. Cora?
Yeah, what I was asking is, don't you need to have a particular amount of income before you there's a necessity to register in the GST? Is it necessary? At what level do you register your GST number?
Yeah.
How much
up
income
to
do you
20
need to have?
No, it is not a income, madam. GST is based on the turnover. I think you
Right, so
are
exactly.
you're mentioning
So
income
that's
as a
what a
turnover.
turnover.
Okay.
How much turnover do you need before
Yeah.
you register for a GST number?
That is why the government is giving the threshold limit of 20 lakhs. The government is giving up to 20 lakhs. You need not register with the GST.
Right. So if you
20 lakhs.
register before 20 lakhs, then you
One information,
paying GST.
the 20 lakhs has been increased to 40 lakhs. Recent
Okay.
amendments. Okay.
So which means if you have a small proprietorship
Yeah. Up to,
company, you do not need to register till you are getting a turnover of 20 lakhs.
40 lakhs. 40 lakhs is
40 lakhs.
40 lakhs.
So up to 40 lakhs you need not register.
Yeah,
So
you
then
need
you
not
only pay what's called your service tax.
No, service tax is abolished, madam. Now only GST only is the goods and service tax. So
So
GST up to 40 lakhs, you need not even register with the GST department. Up till 40 lakhs, you are free. You need not pay GST. You need not file a return. You are exempted from paying GST till 40 lakhs.
The regular income tax alone.
Now, income tax is different. Income tax is different. I am talking about only GST.
Mr. Balu, when was this 40
Freelance
lakh
work, what are they
limit
cutting
raised
it?
from 20 to 40?
The 40 lakhs limit increased in 2016, sir.
Okay.
Sorry, 16 lakh, 18. 17 the GST was implemented, and 18 it is increased to 40 lakhs.
Okay.
For traders, the 40 lakhs limit for traders. For service providers is 20 lakhs. Sorry.
Okay.
The 40 lakhs limit only for traders. The service providers, the limit is 20 lakhs.
I think we will all come under service providers. So
Yeah.
Yes.
For service tax is 20 lakhs.
So when you are doing a freelance job for say another publisher, like in our industry, they cut about 12% from whatever they pay you. So what are they cutting as TDS? So what is that then?
The TDS is the income tax provision. Now the 10%, not 12%. 10% they are deducting.
Right.
12% they will deduct as a income tax TDS. That tax can be adjusted when you file your income tax return. That is different.
Okay.
That is the tax is deducted from you, and they will deposit the tax into your PAN account.
Understood.
So you can claim the tax when you file your income tax return.
Okay, so that is nothing to do with GST, just the TDS.
That is nothing TDS.
Okay.
Whatever the amount, instead of paying to you, they will deposit that amount into your PAN account, and you can claim the PAN account when you file your income tax return.
Yeah, that my accountant normally does.
Yeah, either you can adjust your tax payable, or you can get refund from the account. It's depends on your income. That is different issue, but GST is different.
Okay, fair enough.
So Dr. Ruchika has asked a question. For private limited companies, how small establishment can go for in terms of starting capital?
Yeah, actually in private limited, lot of announcements are coming today for small businessmen also. Previously up to 1 lakh the tax is 4,000 rupees. Now they have increased from 1 lakh to 10 lakh. If you are starting the company with up to 10 lakhs, you need not pay any tax. Only 500 rupees is tax is okay. And the complaints also they are reducing day by day. Now most of the small companies are up to only for private limited companies.
I think
Nowadays it's not tough to open a private limited. It is very easy actually nowadays. Only thing you have to file all the returns, statutory compliances in time. That is the only problem. If you are not doing that, the penalties and it's very high. That is the only thing.
I think I'm sorry. I think her question is, what is the minimum starting capital to start a private limited?
1 lakh, 1 lakh. Actually, the 1 lakh is the minimum capital, madam, for starting a private limited company.
Okay, there is another question from Veena. She is asking, can two people start a company and can one be a non-resident Indian?
Not an issue, sir. One non-resident, one resident is not a problem. A lot of foreign companies are opening. But the thing is, all non-resident or resident, we have to go with the DIN, Director Identification Number, and digital signature certificate. That is required. For non-resident, for resident is not a problem. For non-resident, for applying DIN, we have to the passport copy and certified passport passport copy of that original country. Suppose the person who is residing in London or America, his passport to be attested by the Indian embassy in UK. The document is required for NRA.
Okay.
But NRA also can become the director, not an issue.
What kind of tax liabilities are there for NRI people?
No, the income tax is for only the private limited companies. So the two people, one is resident, one is non-resident. Okay.
If I'm not resident and I am opening a company with the partner of mine who is in India.
Okay.
So what kind of tax liabilities I am?
30%, madam. 30%.
The same tax slabs which are
Yes,
which,
exactly.
government
For NRI, whatever the payment to NRI, 30% TDS to be deducted. Section 195.
Yeah, so the same thing goes on.
Yes,
And
yes,
they just need to keep that NRE account, NRO account.
No, the NRE account is the amount which come from in other than INR only you will get exemption. So NRA account, why the government is giving exemption is the amount you cannot deposit Indian rupee in NRA account, NRO account. It's all a dollar. So you are the director in private limited company. You are getting some salary or some consultation from the company. That is income for you. So that income, 30% tax is applicable for you. So for example, the company is paying 100 rupees to you as a consultation or whatever the remuneration. The company should deduct 30% of 100 and balance 70,000 will be remitted to your account.
But like the present case is, I live outside India, and if I work for, like, I provide my services to Indian people, Indian companies, say,
Okay.
something, and right now I am getting my money into the NRE account, NRE NRO account. So why it isn't?
You are working under any company?
No.
As an employee?
Yeah, I'm working as a freelancer.
Okay.
And I'm working for Indian companies. They'll pay me through Indian rupee, right?
No. You are in out of India, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. You are providing service to whom?
To say an Indian publishing house.
Okay. Where it is?
Say Bombay.
Is Bombay. Okay.
So they are like paying me in rupees only, INR only.
INR. Okay.
So
how is the tax calculated for her?
Yeah, how am I liable to that?
Yeah, suppose if you are receiving money in INR, it is taxable in India.
That is taxable.
It is taxable in India.
Right, but up to a certain limit, of course.
Do you have account in India?
Yes, I have account in India, and that I'm getting that money in NRE NRO account.
Okay.
Right, in Indian rupees.
It is taxable, madam. It is taxable in India.
Taxable based on the regular income tax.
Regular income, yeah. Up to 10 lakhs on slab is available. 5 lakhs is slab, and 5 to 10 lakhs is 20%. 10 lakhs above is 30%. Based on the slab, they are, and they are deducting TDS, madam. They are deducting 10% TDS.
They are not deducting TDS. They say that like, I don't know, when the letter came, they said that they won't because this doesn't come under taxation or something was there. I just forgot. Anyhow, I'm not reaching up to that limit, so I was like, relax.
Okay.
Then
what type of arrangement between you and the company, I don't know, because whether you are acting as a consultant or employee.
I'm not employee. not employee. I'm just providing my services as a freelance.
Okay.
So, anyways, if my income goes up a certain limit, then only I'll be liable, right?
Okay.
Whatever the slab is, according to whatever the slab is.
Okay.
Okay, anyways, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I think we have answered the questions
Yeah.
by Shweta Bharati.
Yeah, there is a
answered it,
question. Yeah, there is a question by Anju. Let Mr. Balu attend the call. I will.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah,
Vivek.
Mr. Balu. There is a question. Do you suggest personal account, current account, or company current account in case of proprietorship?
Yeah. No. Repeat once again.
Do you suggest personal current account or company current account in case of proprietorship?
No. Proprietor, you open a current account for business.
Okay.
Don't go with a proper savings bank account, because lot of restriction savings bank account. If you do transaction more than 10 lakh rupees, will be reported to the income tax department. Don't do any transaction, commercial transaction in savings bank account. You please open a current account, even though it is a proprietorship company.
Okay.
I
So
have
when-
the question. Should I open account in my own name or a
Company
name
name.
given?
Company name. Company name.
Okay, thank you.
Company name.
Kora Bhatia has a question. What documents do you need for a proprietor company?
No
you
documents or nothing. Your PAN card, your Aadhaar card, that is enough. You can open the company immediately.
Okay.
Okay, I think Shweta has a follow-up question on GST. We have registered for GST. Is it possible that we deregister from the GST?
Yeah, you can do. You registered today. Your threshold limit is not your turnover not reaching 20 lakhs. But if you want to cancel the registration, you can do it immediately. Not an issue.
Okay.
Sir, I have one more question.
Yes, yes, madam.
Go ahead, please.
I have one more question, sir. As I've read in the newspaper about the MSME, so which can be opened in a day and 3 days. Now the compliances have been reduced.
Yes, sir. MSME is applicable for service industries. You can register immediately. Lot of benefits are there for MSME. You can go with that
For
MSME.
the compliances benefits, I have understood, but I wanted to be very clear for the compliance because I have registered my organization in the Commercial Shop Establishment Act. Now I wanted to understand what would be the compliances for the Shop Establishment Act, and the second is if I register in MSME.
No. You want the benefits for registering MSME. That's what, no?
I want to
Yes.
understand the compliances of both. Is there any difference between the compliances of MSME and Commercial Shop Establishment Act?
No. I'm not able to understand your question, madam.
I have opened my organization in the
Okay,
Commercial
it-
Shop Establishment Act.
In the commercial?
Commercial Shop Establishment.
Oh, okay. Commercial shop and establishment. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
And now I want to understand what are the compliances for the Commercial Shop Establishment Act. And if I go for MSME now, but now it is free, earlier it was charged.
No, madam.
So
Yes.
I just wanted to understand what are the compliances for both the things, for MSME or Commercial Shop
Yeah,
Establishment?
commercial shop and establishment act is entirely different from MSME, madam. Shop and establishment act is registered with the labor department. If you have a labor for any labor, office labor, any labor, more than one labor, you have to go with the Shop and Establishment Act. The entire formalities is different from MSME. Shop and establishment is a labor department. Labor department, you have to submit all the documents. The wage register, how many employees are there, how many women employees are there, how many male employees are there, how many employees above 58 ages. All the information you have to submit with the Shop and Establishment Act. Whereas the MSME is applicable for the industries. You open one company, no, that is applicable. MSME is registered in the company. You are based on the turnover, based on your investment in plant and machinery, whether your company comes under medium, large, or micro or macro. Based on that, they will give the certificate. Yes, two different things actually.
Yeah, there was a clause of rupees 15,000 as a salary.
Hmm.
So minimum salary, would it be 15,000 for an employee, or how it is going to work?
It is comes under the Labor Act, Shop and Establishment Act. The Minimum Wages Act is applicable to all the industries. Actually,
Okay.
it is differ one to one. Suppose if you are handling the hazardous products or any manufacture based on the industries, the minimum wages is fixed by the Tamil Nadu government. Madam. In which industries you are dealing and handling, based on the minimum wages will be varied. Most of the minimum wages 7,500 per employee. The minimum wage is 7,500. Most of the industries.
Okay.
It
And what
depends
is
on the industry. It vary. Depends on the industry. Yes, madam.
what are the what is this minimum for the printing?
For printing industry, I need to check, madam. It is some index is there. I need to check what is the minimum wages for printing industries.
Oh,
I will tell you.
okay. Thank you.
Hi, this is Veena here. I've got a question.
Yes, madam.
So what I'd like to know is I employ mostly freelancers,
Okay.
and I think I have about 15 to 20 working for me. So how does this work? Can I register under MSME? Will that be all right?
Yeah, MSME is no way connected with your employees, madam.
Okay. Okay.
MSME is connected with your activities.
Okay.
Whether you are manufacturing, whether you are traders or service provider, is based on the thing MSME is applicable. For
Okay.
traders, MSME is not applicable. MSME applicable only for the service providers and manufacturers,
Okay.
not
So
based
I'm
on
a
the
service
employees.
provider.
You
Basically,
can
we do a lot of teaching and all that.
you can
So
do for pannalam. You can do MSME registration.
okay, okay. And MSME, do I have to register the name also in the sense,
No.
would that name come under a registered trademark?
No. It's a different. MSME is the only your activities comes under MSME. That's it. In no way connected with your name and all. If
Okay,
you want to register your name, it is comes under the intellectual property rights trademark.
okay,
That is
okay,
different. That is different.
okay,
MSME, the benefit given to your activities.
okay,
The main object of the MSME is to encourage the entrepreneurs in India,
okay, okay,
whether in service industry or manufacturing industries. Now the
okay.
Modi has announced that no, that Suya Bharadam, like this, the name is
Atmanirbhar,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
that thing. That is the
Okay,
scheme. That is the main reason the MSME is giving lot of benefits to the manufacturers
okay,
who manufacture in India.
okay, all right. So just one more question. So if I register under the MSME, do I need to worry about the sole proprietorship company and all that?
No.
I
MSME,
don't have to
that's why
worry.
MSME is applicable to the firm, whether it is a
Okay,
proprietor or partnership or private limited. If you are doing some manufacturing activities, if you are doing some service industries, MSME giving benefits. It's not like
okay,
a proprietor, they will not differentiate proprietor, partnership, private limited.
all
The
right.
benefits equally available to all the three categories.
Okay, okay. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, there is a related question on trademark. How
Yeah.
do you and when do you apply for trademarks specific to service providers?
No, once you develop brand, your company name, you want to exclusive in the brand, then you can go with the trademark.
Okay.
You are developing one brand, you want to promote that brand, then better to go with the trademark. Register your logo,
Okay.
register your name.
So I wanted to clarify, you're saying that trademark is suitable for a brand as opposed to say a feature that I've, as a service provider, if I develop a unique feature service,
Hmm.
should I apply a trademark on that? Should I go for that?
No, you can apply trademark in your company name.
Hmm.
What service you are doing is different, madam. Suppose
Okay.
you are doing service like your company name, like unique teaching providers.
Okay.
That unique you can do the trademark register. Unique and logo, some style, name style, you can register.
Okay.
So for example, for Lalita Jewelry, for example, I did a trademark for 35 classes Lalita Jewelry.
Hmm.
That symbol is L and LITH. That's name and style. The name and style we have registered on a trademark. Nobody can use that name and style. Like that, you create your own style of name and style with color, that you can register with the most of the companies. They promote their products with the logo only.
Yeah.
Once you see the logo, what they are doing, you will understand. You know what based on the logo. Once you see the logo, you know what they are specialized in the category. So if you want to do that, you can do some trademark.
So if I have a logo and it's a proprietary firm, right? If someone replicates it, then I can't sue because I don't have the legal power as a proprietary firm. Can I sue or can I not sue?
You can sue once you registered.
Okay.
Once you registered, you got the trademark certificate. After that, if anybody using the same logo in anywhere in India, he can sue. You have a right to send a notices and you can stop immediately. You can claim the damages.
Okay, and who gives the trademark certificate? Like which department?
The intellectual property in Delhi, in Chennai is a 4 state in Tamil Nadu, for Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Kerala, Karnataka. The head office is in Chennai.
Okay.
But for a person who is in Delhi, I think the office will be in Delhi.
Delhi, yeah.
Okay.
All metro cities, the intellectual property office is available.
It's in Dwarka.
Okay. Cora has another question, I think. Yes, Cora?
Yeah. Okay, so if you're opening a proprietorship company, you don't need a registration, you're saying.
Yes,
But for
yes.
the bank account, do you need, what are the documents? You'll need the Stock and Establishment Act document to open a bank account, a current account?
No. For current account, normally, if you go with the current account, current account, they will ask the MSME certificate for opening the current account in your company.
What is the full form of MSME? What is that supposed to be?
MSME, minimum, small, maximum MSME. 1 minute, I will tell you.
Micro, small.
Micro,
So
small.
how do you get the certificate?
You can register online, madam.
Okay.
You
So
can
whether it's a services or whether it's goods, whether
no,
for
it is a very-
services or for goods, either way you can do that.
You can do. Manufacturing service industries can do that.
Okay. So you apply for the certificate and that's all you have to give to open the current account.
Yeah, you can open the current account. Yeah.
Okay.
Is a GST registration number also required for opening the current account?
Actually, if you can give the declaration, my turnover not exceeding threshold limit of 20 lakhs, 40 lakhs. If you can give the declaration by the chartered, you or by the chartered accountant, they will accept that. They will open based on the MSME certificate. They will open the current account.
Okay.
Yeah, because for most online small companies also they ask you for GST number. Supposing you want to do trading with Amazon, they ask you for a GST number.
Yeah. For online trading and all, there is no threshold limit. If you
so
want
that
to,
you don't have.
yeah, for online trading, there is no threshold limit.
So then you
have
need
to-
a GST.
Yeah, then you need a
No
GST.
matter how small it is.
Yeah. You go with the Amazon platform, no? The
Yeah,
Amazon
that's for GST.
the Amazon turnover will be calculated as for threshold limit purpose.
Oh, so
you're
it's
doing-
not your individual.
You are doing business through Amazon, okay? So
Right.
what is the Amazon turnover? Amazon turnover is more than 20 lakhs. So the threshold limit, the government will be calculating you and Amazon, both the threshold is gone. So you cannot enjoy the threshold limit of 20 lakhs.
Okay.
If you do trading on your own, the threshold you can enjoy the limit of 20 lakhs. If you do some online and all, some other platform, the threshold limit is not applicable.
Okay.
Mr. Balu, I have like 2 more questions. One is, if an Indian freelancer is working for a company based in US or UK, like an outside company based outside India, so they don't know anything about GST, they don't want to do anything about GST. So should that freelancer register for GST in India?
1 minute, sir, repeat the question.
Is a freelancer from India? I mean,
Yeah.
is an Indian staying away?
Yeah, if an Indian freelancer has foreign clients,
Okay.
so should he register for GST?
Exactly correct, sir, because it's an export of services. For export of services also no threshold limit. The threshold limit is applicable for the dealer who doing business in Tamil Nadu.
India.
If you do transaction out of Tamil Nadu, even 1 rupee, the threshold limit is not applicable. You have to go with the registration. So export of services comes under intrastate transactions.
Okay, so I understand that if a person is offering services outside of their own home state, okay, so somebody in Andhra providing services to somebody in Mumbai.
Okay.
So however small the transaction is, the GST registration is mandatory, and then they have to cover GST there.
Yes, correct. They have to cover.
But the question is for foreign country.
Yeah, that answer is not clear.
No. So,
Yeah, would that be the same?
Muruge, repeat that question, sir.
If I'm offering my services to a client in Singapore, let's say.
Okay.
So this is my first client, so I haven't met the 20 lakh threshold also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What kind of requirements are associated with it?
Yeah, it's an export of services, no? You are exporting. You are doing service in out of India. It's export of services. So you have to go with registration. You have to do registration, GST registration, and you have to apply LUT, letter of undertaking. After that, you have to raise a bill to your Singapore client.
Okay. So if my understanding is correct, I can. So if this is my first client, I'm going to, let's say, charge him 1 lakh rupees. Okay, so by GST standards, it is not necessary, but because I'm offering this service outside of India, so GST is mandatory. But at the same time, I'm offering an export of services, therefore it also gives provision for exemption of GST. So I register for GST, request the government of India to waive off GST, and then bill only the actual amount. Is that correct?
Correct. That's right.
Okay.
So export of services is exempted for GST. So you need not pay GST, but registration is compulsory. You have to do a registration.
Okay. And if you don't fall under that category, does the tax comes back?
No, it is a tax exempted, madam. You need not pay any tax.
No, I am saying I have not reached the threshold, but still I have taken the GST.
Yes.
So what will the tax come back to me?
No, you did not pay any tax. No, you are not paying any tax. No, then what is the
I have charged it from the client, right?
No, you should not charge from your client. If you are doing service to Singapore, you should not charge tax.
I'm talking of an Indian client. I'm not talking of Singapore.
Indian client without registration, you cannot collect the tax. You should not collect tax. Okay. If you are unregistered dealer, then you can't collect the tax, no.
Since I have taken the GST number, take an example where I have actually given the training to MS Harvest Group. I have given a training. So they asked me about the GST.
Okay.
So now
you are registered dealer, no?
Not yet registered.
Then you have to you have to register first, then only you can issue an invoice with the GST.
That is what I'm saying. When I issue the invoice with the GST, my question is, I have given the invoice with the GST, what will happen to that amount? Tax जो collect होके आएगा वो कैसे होगा? मतलब वो 18% होगा. Company की तरफ से तो आएगा ना वो 18% पैसा.
Well, I think what she is asking is when we raise a bill, for 1 lakh and then collect 18,000 as GST. Okay. What do we do with the amount of 18,000?
You have to pay to the department, no?
Yes, we need to pay regularly. That's what I think he explained that in his slide. You have to pay that whatever GST you collected in a month, you have to pay it within 180 days to the GST department.
That tax you have to pay within 20 days. Next month 20 days you have to pay.
Okay.
The 180 days provision is the input tax credit.
Oh, for me to take credit.
For you to take credit, you should you can take credit immediately. That credit is a provisional credit. When you pay the payment to the vendor, then only it is a permanent credit. Otherwise, it is a provisional credit. If you are not making to your supplier within 180 days, the credit what you availed will be disallowed by the department.
Okay, got it. I think I'll give you an example how I do that. I think this explains your situation also. I work with a couple of companies offer services. I raise bill on the last day of every month. Let's say 30th. So 30th June, I have raised invoice for 3 different companies for 1 lakh each. Okay. I have to pay 18,000 into 3 companies, 54,000 before 20th of July. Irrespective of whether the companies paid me or not, I have to pay that.
Yeah, exactly correct. Yeah, once you raise the invoice, you have to pay.
Yes. My payments can come a little later, but I have to pay within the 20th of the next month. And
No,
if not done,
not
there will
little
be
later.
penalty.
Even if your payment not come to you also, you cannot claim that amount. You have to get the amount through filing some suits and all. By case only you can get back that amount. You cannot reverse that amount. Good. So before raising the tax invoice, you have to be very careful whether is a very genuine client or what. That is, you have to think before raising the invoice. Once you raise the invoice, you have to pay tax. You cannot reverse that amount.
So if I do not pay within the 20th of next month, there will be a penalty, daily penalty adding up, right?
They will be charging 9% interest.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So, Murugaraj, I think the question was she has raised an invoice, but she is not yet registered for GST. So, how do she register? And
I
how
think
much time
that's
does
what
it
Balu
take?
said, right? Without registering, you cannot even claim GST because in the invoice you have to quote your GST number.
But yeah.
No. My question is that I have not yet registered, but they have asked me for the GST number, and now I just wanted to understand because since the payments are what will happen to that GST? As the Murugaraj said, 18,000 is the GST. So, like as our service tax comes back, does this GST amount also comes back if there is input-output credit tax I include?
Murugaraj, I think the question is just like the TDS, na? Companies deduct TDS, and if our income tax limit is not within that thing, we get it back.
Okay.
So does the same thing apply for GST? Like we are below 20 lakh, but we have paid GST. So will it come back to us?
1 minute. 1 minute.
No. Repeat once again, madam. I will tell you. Whatever the TDS, tell me, madam. Yeah.
Excess TDS deducted by a company comes back. Murugaraj, I think I will explain it to you. The excess TDS like deducted by the companies, we can claim it during income tax filing and we get a refund.
Yeah, you can get a refund. Yeah.
But what about GST?
GST is the tax. It is not an excess amount. No, it is a tax you are collecting, and who is paying, he can take input tax credit. Okay, he can adjust the tax from his output tax liability.
Okay.
It is an input tax, output tax concept.
So I don't have to worry. It's the company that has to think about that.
Yeah.
Okay, Jasminder has a question. If I have not registered for GST and my income is less than 20 lakhs and I supply my services across India, do I need to register for GST?
Yes, sir. If you are supplying out of Tamil Nadu, the registration is compulsory. If you do transaction within Tamil Nadu, the threshold limit you can enjoy 40 lakhs. If you start to do transaction out of Tamil Nadu, you have to go with the registration. There is no threshold limit of 40 lakhs.
But if one does not register, what can be the implications?
The entire transaction will be taxed by the department with the penalty, 150% penalty. If you are doing transaction out of Tamil Nadu, all over India, without registering GST, your entire transaction will be taxed by the department 18% with 150% penalty.
That is huge news. Like, I had no idea about that.
And what about this thing, overseas transactions? The penalty is the same, is it?
Yeah, same. Even if it is overseas transaction also, you have to register it first and you have to get a LUT, then only you can you started to do billing. Okay. Otherwise, if the department find that mistakes, definitely they will put penalty 150%.
Okay.
Thank you. If I'm doing the job with the overseas company, USA, let's say, I'm working with the USA, do I need to register first?
You are working or you are free? You are a consultant?
I'm working with a remote employer.
You are not employer, no? You are, yes.
Remote employer of 2-3 companies.
Yeah, you are doing service to the foreign clients, no?
Yeah.
Your voice is breaking. That's all.
So do I need to register?
What, madam?
I have my proprietorship account first thing, and the second thing is I am giving the service to the overseas clients. As a service, I am working as a remote employee.
Okay.
Yeah. So do I need to register for GST?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay.
You have to register.
Okay, guys, we will wind up because Mr. Balu has to go for another meeting. Although we have a lot more questions, but I think we can pass those questions on to Mr. Murugaraj, and he will get those answered from Mr. Balu.
Okay.
And main thing that we would like him to tell us, maybe through an email or whatever, how to register for GST, how much time does it take, how much money does it take. That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
Sir.
a
Thank
lot
you all.
for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.